Hi, Acadiana. Meteorologist Dave Baker here on a Tuesday afternoon. It's a hot one here in Lafayette and much of Acadiana, too. And we've got a heat advisory that's in effect. So if you're going to be outside or you have to be outside, make sure you take plenty of breaks, use the shade and air conditioning as much as possible, drink plenty of fluids, and wear those light, loose fitting clothing. And just take it easy on these very hot dog summer days that we have here in South Louisiana. That heat advisory could push those heat index values as high as 111 over central Louisiana. And kind of an unusual thing that I saw earlier this morning, the New Orleans National Weather Service office has issued an extreme heat watch for some of the coastal parishes from Terrebonne over to around Plaquemines Parish. That's something I have not seen very often in my career here in South Louisiana. Yeah, an extreme heat watch. They're talking about some heat index values tomorrow there along the coast, getting up as high as 115 or 120. So really some summer-like weather across Acadiana. Right now it's 90 with a heat index of 103. The dew point should not be 76,077. I believe that is 77 is the dew point right now. Humidity at 67%. Winds are calm and the pressure at 30.07. And looking at some of our cameras here, for the most part, we're seeing dry conditions over Acadiana, but there are a few spotty showers that are out there. So you might hit a little bit of rain to turn on the windshield wipers there for just a few minutes. But most of us are going to be staying relatively dry across Acadiana this time around. As you can see, there's a couple of spotty showers there around Maurice and Youngsville, a couple of them down along the 14 south of Abbeville, and then getting over to around Intracoastal City, Esther, Henry, those areas are seeing a little bit of rain. Got a little shower there north of Esterwood. And outside of that, there's really not a whole lot. So about a 20% chance that you'll get wet this time around. It probably will be welcome if it would last long enough. But these are going to be kind of the showers that are just going to make it feel even more oppressive out there. Boaters, you got a decent day. Winds are really calm. A lot of that thanks to a ridge of high pressure aloft and also at the surface. So those winds are extremely light. In fact, we've got a calm wind here in Lafayette, and the winds are only going to be out of the southwest 5 to 10 knots, maybe. And those seas are going to be running about 1 to 2 feet. Hi, Brian. Welcome to Let's Talk, or Byron, rather. Welcome to Let's Talk Tropics here on a Tuesday. Thanks for sticking with me today. Really pretty day at Panama City Beach. Look at that water. Isn't that amazing? White sandy beaches, gorgeous day. It's a hot one. I don't know how you guys do it out at a beach, but I'm one of those folks that stay in the water pretty much all the time. And I think I would be if it was a beach day with these kind of temperatures along the Gulf Coast. Looks like a shower trying to develop there. This is the camera from Orange Beach looking off toward the west. So you're looking, or rather toward the east over toward Florida. So you can see you got some showers, maybe trying to get going there right along the coast. Off an island, pretty day there. Looks like they've got a decent breeze, just kind of looking at the flag there, maybe about a 10-mile-per-hour breeze, and that's about it. The Cocodrie cams are down today, so I don't have that webcam for you. But Galveston, over around the Bayou Vista Bridge, sometimes you get a train that goes across that trestle there that's kind of cool to watch, but it's a pretty day there over in southeast Texas. So a big ridge of high pressure is in place here across much of the deep south, and that upper level ridge is pretty much positioned right about here, and it's going to start to make a move kind of in that direction over the next couple of days. So the heat wave that we have here over the south is going to be expanding over the Ohio River Valley and then pushing across the east coast. Now, as it moves out of the way, that could allow a bit of a low pressure area to kind of slide its way back off toward the west. Sorry about that, telestrator. It just does not want to work with me, but it's going to push off toward the west around the bottom of that ridge of high pressure. And at this point, we're not expecting tropical development, but we are going to be seeing an increased chance for rain, especially as we get into Thursday, Friday, and over the course of the weekend. And there's some shower and thunderstorm activity there over North Florida and in the adjacent coastal waters. That's not really part of that low just yet. So we've got a front that's going to be pushing. Let me go back to this one real quick. We do have a front that's kind of draped like that. It's a stationary front, and you're going to have kind of a low pressure area. And the spin that you're seeing right over here, that's more of an upper low. So the combination of all that could get some moisture drifting west along the northern Gulf Coast later this week. And as I said, right now, most of the models are keeping the low over land, so any tropical development would be pretty unlikely. So let's hope that's the case, and then we just get some rain to come in to kind of cut these temperatures down a few degrees. Central America, not looking so bad, although there's a pretty good rain over Panama and Costa Rica right now. That's kind of on the bottom of that upper trough that you can see there spinning over the Bahamas. The trough actually drops its way kind of all the way down into Central America. So that's why we're seeing those showers and thunderstorms there. And then, of course, we've got what was 94L. We talked about that quite a bit yesterday, but guess what? That one is fizzling out. And the National Hurricane Center is no longer keeping an eye on that particular disturbance. And out in the central part of the Atlantic, we do have several tropical waves that are out there. Of course, that's what's left of 94L. Looks like you got another bit of a tropical wave here, maybe one right about there, and a pretty decent one starting to come off the African coast. And we're going to see those marching across, several more of them as we go into August. And of course, those tropical waves are going to be able to hold on a lot easier as they make their way across the Atlantic Ocean. But for right now, the tropical weather outlook is free and clear of any tropical cyclone activity over the next 7 days. So that's a good thing. We like to see it like this. Makes a lot of our jobs easier, kind of brings the anxiety down, levels down too when we're not watching any tropical systems at this time. So we'll get into some of the analysis of what we've got going on, and I am going to look into the future 10 days with some of the computer models, and we are going to focus on the northern Gulf Coast, particularly on the increased rain chances too as we go into the weekend. But our water temperatures are extreme over the Gulf as well as the northern part of the Caribbean. Those Celsius temperatures there, 30 to 32. So you're talking about anywhere from 86 to 90 degree water on the Fahrenheit scale. And basically all of the Caribbean, the Gulf, the Western Atlantic, and really the Central Atlantic, those water temperatures definitely warm enough to support tropical development. And then the tropical cyclone heat potential, we are very fortunate that there's really nothing looking to cross that area here over the next several days, because that heat potential, the heat content, is extreme there over parts of the Western Caribbean. So what this is not just the measurement of the surface temperatures like we see here, but when you see those darker reds and brown, that is the 80 degree water going below the surface. So sometimes there of the Western Caribbean, you're talking about 80 degree water that might go down 100 meters below the surface. So as tropical systems work across that high heat content, they're not choked by any cold water that's being pulled up below the surface. So if it's got all that heat content to work with, sometimes you can get some rapid intensification. So thank goodness we don't have anything anywhere near that area, nor do we really have anything in the forecast that will go across that area, at least for the next week or so. Wind shear is quite strong there over Florida and much of the central Gulf, and then over Louisiana, and then pushing down fortunately over the Caribbean, where some of that high heat content is. Tropical systems that are developing really struggle when there's a lot of wind shear, because they're really just trying to get going. And when you've got winds blowing at different speeds, at different levels, in different directions, that core of a tropical system that's trying to get going struggles with all of that wind shear, kind of gets blown apart. Sometimes the core can get exposed. So anything that's developing running into wind shear like this really isn't going to have much of a shot. And the same thing happened with 94L, which was, we were kind of talking about it over here, but I mean, even if it were to make it over here in one piece, it's going to run into that very, very hostile environment. And then, of course, we got this other low that might try to develop here over the Carolinas. It's kind of a low wind shear environment right now. But if it were to move off toward the west, into the northern Gulf, or even over land here off toward the west, there's going to be a lot of wind shear in its way. So right now, any development along the northern Gulf Coast looks pretty unlikely at this time. Saharan dust kind of choking things down over parts of the western Gulf Coast, including Louisiana. So we might see some interesting skies, a little more kind of pale blue skies today, thanks to some of that Saharan dust, but occasionally it can enhance our sunrises and sunsets too. And then there's a whole lot of Saharan dust over the middle part of the Atlantic. So tropical waves are going to have to stay way far south of that and avoid it to be able to get anything going there over parts of the Atlantic. So today we're going to kind of start to scoop things out a little bit more as we're now getting into the final days of July. August is pretty much where the rest of the tropical Atlantic tends to open up. So here's the GFS model, and you see some of that moisture working west along the Gulf Coast. But out in the Atlantic, occasionally you see a bit of a low there east of the Windward Islands, maybe another one there about 7 or 8 days down the road. But high pressure is going to become firmly established over the Atlantic. And when you get that pattern, those tropical waves roll their way westward into the Caribbean, sometimes across the Bahamas, but we're not seeing a whole lot of those signs just yet. Most of the action seems to be a little bit closer to home. That frontal boundary will be coming off. This is the Euro model that you're looking at. So you do see some action moving west across the northern Gulf Coast here in the next few days. And then as you look out in the Atlantic, some of those tropical waves, you get a little bit of a low popping up here and there, but nothing real conclusive except for a low kind of zipping across the central part of the Atlantic, which looks like it's about a week and a half down the road. Probably will be another front coming off the New England coast, and then low pressure will kind of develop along that front and slide off toward the northeast. Not sure if that's going to be a tropical system or a subtropical system or just a cold core low, which is pretty likely, especially that far to the north. As we look at the Canadian model, pretty much everything's similar. You get a front to come off the east coast. You get a bit of a low pressure area to develop and kind of drift off toward the west. And you see the increased rain there over Louisiana and then kind of fizzling out. But out in the middle part of the Atlantic, a couple of tropical waves moving across, maybe developing a little bit of a low pressure area, but Canadian model really isn't showing a whole lot. Icon, though, still is trying to pinpoint a tropical depression just offshore of Louisiana. You see it right about there, and then it kind of fizzles out. And then farther out into the Atlantic, it's showing a couple of tropical waves, maybe a bit of a low pressure area. But again, very inconclusive with the exception of that low that zips across the western Atlantic there in those final frames. Now, remember, the Icon model only goes out a week. The other ones go out 10 or even farther, but I'm giving you 10 days there on the other models and 7 for this one. I mean, you get a little bit of a low kind of moving there over the middle part of the Atlantic, which could affect Bermuda. But outside of that, there's really not a whole lot to talk about. So let's focus in more on the Gulf Coast. And I'm stopping the model here on Friday morning for all 4 of our global models. And you can see increased rain across the region, but the GFS not really showing any kind of a low pressure area. Concentrated rainfall there over South Louisiana, but the bulk of the moisture is staying in the offshore waters, even though the low may be on land. So Friday morning, still looking at pretty good chances for rain. Same thing with the Canadian, very, very similar, but no closed low pressure area. It isn't until we get to the Icon where there's still the possibility maybe of a tropical depression if the low were to form over the waters. But the other 3 models are really calling for more of a trend a little bit farther toward the north, maybe kind of zipping it like that. And if it stays over land, of course, we're not going to see any tropical development there. So the model solutions, again, the GFS, Euro, and Canadian, all not calling for a storm, and the Icon still hanging on with the depression. But I would guess most likely that the Icon will probably drop off here in the next day or so, and then we'll be talking about a heavy rain event. At least let's hope so. There could always be some big changes when these models go around. So what I wanted to kind of focus on more was some of the moisture that we're going to be seeing coming in. So this is not really the PWatts that I showed you the other day. This is just more the measurement of the relative humidity between kind of the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. And if you've got a lot of moisture out there, tropical systems can feed on that. And I'm looking at the Euro model here, and then you see as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, notice how the tropical moisture now is starting to edge its way into the Acadiana area. So you can see that kind of the borderline of that moisture getting in there. So eastern halves of portions of Acadiana will likely see better chances for rain by Thursday, and then the rest of Acadiana will probably hold on until about Friday. But again, the thing that I want you to kind of notice is a lot of the moisture is out here over the Gulf. So hopefully the heavy rains will go there as well. And as far as the GFS, it's really about the same. You kind of see that moisture drifting westward. And the bulk of it there is out over the Gulf waters. And then the other two models don't do that 700 millibar moisture there. So let's just go into the some of the rainfall totals that we're kind of expecting. And here's the GFS. So we'll just take this through, let's go through Monday. And you can see if you use the scale that's over here on the left, you get into the pinks there. So maybe some 2-inch rainfalls over parts of Vermilion and Cameron Parish. Well, the rest of us looks like about 1.5 inches or so. Euro is showing the bulk of its moisture staying in the offshore waters as well. This is taking us through, this is actually through Friday, Saturday. Let's go all the way through Monday here. And that way we catch the weekend too. So there you go. We're looking at the heaviest amounts of rain out in the offshore waters. Canadian models, a little bit more of a higher resolution there. Again, also showing most of the heavy totals in the offshore waters, and the same goes for the icons. So I don't think we're going to be talking about 3 to 6 inch rainfalls like what we saw with Disturbance 93L last weekend. At this point, it looks like we're going to be talking about maybe 1 to 3 inches of rain over a 3-day period, and I believe most of us will be able to handle that without any problems. So one last graphic before we move along. I'd like to show you this one, and tomorrow we're going to get the Global Tropics Hazard Outlook for week 2 and week 3. It actually updates in about 2 hours, and so I'll have it for you tomorrow, but the Euro Tropical Formation forecast is kind of scaled back as well. I don't know if you remember on Saturday, I had a social media post that was showing maybe a 40 to 50% chance that we would see some development there along the Florida Gulf Coast. But that's really dropped off. And this is just going through Monday of next week. So during this week, I think we're going to be okay. But we will be keeping an eye on the middle part of the Atlantic too, because as we finish off the month of July, this is pretty much where most of our tropical systems develop or pass by. But look at August. Things really open up for business. So that's why I've been showing you the North Atlantic, the entire tropical Atlantic basin, with these models, and we'll probably stick with that here from here on out through the hurricane season until we get to maybe October, where things start to scale back once again. But during the month of August, things really get busy over the Atlantic, the Northern Caribbean, the Gulf, and the Atlantic coast. And you saw there on some of those computer models that it was talking about maybe some action somewhere off the East Coast, maybe out here, maybe over toward Bermuda, or even scooting farther out. And then we saw a couple of lows here and there that were out here over the Atlantic too. So that might be a hint that August is just around the corner. And as you can see, activity really skyrockets once we cross past August 1st, and particularly about August 10th. And then we hit the peak of the season about September the 10th, and then it starts to drop off. So here along the Gulf Coast, we usually try to keep our guard up through October now. Last year, we had those hurricanes that moved across the Gulf during the month of November, which was pretty unusual. But here in South Louisiana, I would say by October 15th, you can start to kind of breathe a sigh of relief, but definitely by November 1st, you're in much, much better shape. Well, I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. If you do like this video, subscribe to my channel and also turn on those notifications. Remember, you hear my forecasts daily on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. And if there are any changes in between shows, you can always follow my social media pages on Facebook and X. And of course, thanks to everyone who joined me today on Let's Talk Tropics, and thanks to everyone who subscribed, especially some of my new subscribers here over the last couple of weeks. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you on Wednesday morning. Have a great day.